In this tutorial, in the previous tutorial, we looked at view component, we looked at image component. In this particular tutorial, we're going to be looking at a scroll view component, okay? So the scroll view component allows for scrolling content that is larger than the screen. So if you've ever used your mobile phone before and you're looking at a list, you know you have to scroll through, and that is what the scroll view is used for. It allows you to be able to scroll onto the screen. You can use a scroll view instead of a view if you wanted your screen to be scrollable, and you can also use a scroll view inside of a view, because remember, a view acts as a container. Okay, so for this particular example, I'm going to create a scroll view example. So scroll view component, okay, and then what I'm going to do is, instead of using a view, I am going to import a scroll view. Okay, I'm going to import a scroll view, and then I'm just going to duplicate this text here, which is what we've been using all throughout. I'm going to duplicate so many times so that you'll be able to see exactly what is happening. And then instead of calling view component, image component, I'm just going to call in the scroll view component. Okay, and then we can see exactly how this would work. Cool. So what you can see here is we've actually created a scroll view component. The only difference we did was a scroll view instead of a view. And then what you can see is that now that the screen, it becomes scrollable. That part of the screen becomes scrollable. So you can scroll up, you can scroll down. So that's what a scroll view is used for. Okay. In this example, what we've done is it contains multiple text components that we want to use. So we're using the text component. We can put a view inside of there. Ideally, you want to avoid putting a scroll view inside of a scroll view, but there are some days where you may need, or some projects that you may need to actually add a scroll view inside a scroll view, or a flat list, which we're going to have a look at later on. Now, the next part of the tutorial that I want to have a look at is I want us to create a button. Okay, now we're going to create a button component, okay, so that you can see how buttons work. And the reason why I'm creating all of it in components, so that you can see that you can create components and use it over and over again. So constant, and let's say button example, for example. So button example. So this is a button. It's showing up as red because I need to import button. Great. And then I'm going to call button component. Beautiful. So the annoying thing about buttons in React Native is that you can't style it. If you wanted to style the button itself, you are going to have to style around it. Okay. So the view has to be what you use to style it. So for example, if I add a style here, and I do, let's say, border, we can add a border or anything to it. What you will discover is it will not work. It doesn't work properly, okay, when it comes to styling buttons. I'll show you later on. But this is a button. A button has many properties that you can add to it. One of it is called a title. Okay, so if you click on here right now, it says click me. We can change it. You can say click me and go, and then if you click on it, it should show you button clicked. Okay, so that's how you use a button. Okay, it's used for user interaction, such as submitting forms, navigating between screens. You can find this being used across the entire React Native component application. So that is a button component. Later on, I'll show you a popular kind of component that people use to replace buttons, because you cannot style buttons. It's very difficult to style buttons. Okay. I was going to show you other components, for example, like a switch, but a switch would involve me showing you how to use states. Now, I haven't covered states yet, so I would cover switches when I look at states. Okay. But the next component that I want us to have a look at is a flat list. Okay. A flat list. Now, what is a flat list? Well, a flat list component renders a list of data efficiently. So let's say, for example, you have a list of items and you want to display those list of items. A flat list helps us to be able to display that in a list. Okay. So how does a flat list work? Well, the flat list works like this. So constant flat list component, and then we have a view there, but we're going to change that now to using a flat list. Okay, so I'm going to call in a flat list. Okay, now a flat list has some properties. Now all of these things that we mentioned are called properties. They're called props. Usually you see props, you hear props. They're basically properties that you can feed information in through or data through. Now I'm going to import my flat list. Great. Now a flat list contains usually the most basic things that you need in a flat list is the data. And the data is basically the information that you're given the flat list. Okay. Sorry, let me change this to F capital. There we go. Is the data. Okay. And then the next property that you usually would see is render item. Okay. Now I will have a separate tutorial to go through this. I'm just showing you these are the basic components that you are likely to see when you work with them. Okay. So let's say, for example, I wanted to add some data. For example, I want to add an array of objects, for example. So let me add a key, and then we say item 1, for example, and then we can add another one. We can say key, and then we can add item 2, for example, and then our render item. Do not be confused at this particular stage. Okay, I'm just showing you some basic components that we are going to go through this. I just want to show you how they display and how they come up on the screen. So we have render item, and then we can add some key informations in there that we can use. So in my render item, I'm just going to have this here, opening brace, and I'm going to put in there, I'm going to put, let's say, item, for example. And then in my item, what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to use my arrow function, and I'm going to display a text. Okay, so I'm going to say that for each and every single one of my items, I want you to display a text. Okay, so we can do text. Like this, text, we have text, and then our text may say item dot key, for example. Okay. Sometimes one of the most difficult things of when you're building it is you may come across some errors like this, because you see the amazing thing is sometimes the difficulty is that when you're writing so much code on the screen, you're going to have to break it down for it to help you to be able to understand and know exactly what you're building. So in this particular example, I've got this here, right? But for some reason, I haven't actually closed it properly. So that's why I'm getting that particular error. So let's have a look at this. So what you will find is, okay, so the error is I've got a curly brace here, and I've got one here that ends, but I'm adding another one. So let me get rid of that. Okay, and there we have a flat list which has some data, and we're saying that for each and every single data, just print out the key, okay, and print in a text. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to replace this button component with a flat list, and you should see flat list component. Okay, and then you should see item 1 and item 2. Now automatically a flat list is also like a scroll view. It works as a scroll view because you're actually displaying a list of things. So you can scroll down and you can scroll up. So that is what a flat list component does. We have data, then we have the render item, which is to how it's supposed to look, how it's supposed to be displayed onto the screen for the user to be able to see. So in this particular example, we have data, and we're passing in an array of objects. One is item 1, the second one is item 2, and then we have render item, which is going to display it, the kind of information we wanted the user to see. And that is how you use a flat list. And I will see you in the next video.